I can't even describe how much this person disgusts me. No, not one person, but all of them. My so-called family. It might sound strange, but it all started on the most ordinary day, my birthday. I turned 28, and as usual, I was waiting for a call. Waiting for my mom to call and say she loved me, or for my dad to send a short text to wish me a happy birthday. Nothing. Not a single call, not a single message. Just silence, as deafening as in previous years. I spent the day like any other, woke up, drank coffee, and went to work. My birthday had long become just another Thursday for me, but this time, I decided things would be different. I worked at a startup that developed financial software, and a few months ago, we got a huge investment. The company was growing incredibly fast, and as one of the first employees, I was offered a large stock package. A couple of months later, we went public, and those stocks turned into a fortune. I thought about going on vacation, but instead, I decided to fulfill my long-held dream. Back in college, I always wanted to buy a Mercedes, and now I had the chance. I chose the most expensive one. Black, shiny, with a leather interior and all the bells and whistles. I shelled out almost $100,000 for it and felt like I had finally gotten what I deserved. I posted a picture on my Instagram, just to share my joy with friends. The caption was simple, "Happy birthday to me." That's when it started. First, my mom called. Her voice was full of feigned joy, but I heard something else in it, a note I couldn't quite place. She talked about how much she loved me and how proud she was of me. It made me sick. Right after her, my dad called. His voice was harsh and demanding, no pleasantries. "Where did you get the money for that car? And why didn't anyone tell me you were so rich?" I laughed. I just couldn't help it. I wanted to tell him that the money was none of his business and that he didn't even bother to call me on my birthday, but I just said I was willing to meet with them tomorrow. He asked, "What time?" and I replied, 7 p.m., at our house. They had no idea what was coming. The next day felt like the longest day of my life. The air was thick with a tension that I could feel even from a distance. My phone kept buzzing with texts from my mom, asking what time I was coming, what I was wearing, and if I was bringing a +1. As if this was a normal dinner and not some kind of twisted family tribunal. I ignored most of them, replying only with single-word answers like "soon" or "okay." My dad didn't text, which was even more telling. He was probably planning his interrogation, figuring out how to pin me down and get the truth out of me. The truth, as they saw it, was that I had done something wrong to get that kind of money. That was how their minds worked. Success was something you couldn't achieve on your own, especially not me, their quiet, unremarkable son who had always been overshadowed by my sister, Sarah. Sarah was the golden child. The one who went to an Ivy League school, got a great job in a big city, and was always at the center of attention. She was 2 years older than me, and everything she did was celebrated. Her graduation was a big party, her first apartment was a family milestone, and even her car, a sensible Honda Civic, was talked about for weeks. Me? My high school graduation was a quiet affair, my apartment was just a place to live, and my old used car was never even mentioned. It was always a competition, and I was always losing. It felt like they had no interest in me unless it was to compare me to her. I spent the whole day at work just going through the motions. My mind was completely elsewhere. I kept replaying my dad's voice on the phone, the coldness in his tone. I was expecting an apology for forgetting my birthday, a question about how I was, but all he cared about was the car. All he cared about was money. It confirmed what I already knew: their love, their attention, was conditional. It was based on what I could give them, what I could do for them, and for the longest time, I had nothing to offer. So I got nothing in return. As the afternoon turned into evening, I started to feel a mix of dread and strange satisfaction. I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house right at 7 o'clock. My new Mercedes looked huge and out of place next to my dad's old pickup truck and my mom's minivan. It was almost a physical statement, a line drawn in the sand. I took a deep breath before walking up to the front door. The house was exactly as I remembered it, the same slightly faded paint, the same old welcome mat. When my mom opened the door, her smile was a little too wide, and she wrapped me in a hug that felt more like a cage than an embrace. She kept complimenting my suit, but her eyes were fixed on the driveway, on the car, as if she was trying to calculate its value just by looking at it. I walked in, and my dad and Sarah were already sitting in the living room. Sarah gave me a quick, nervous smile, while my dad just stared at me, his face unreadable. The air in the room was so thick with unspoken questions, it was suffocating. I sat down on the old, familiar couch, and waited. The silence was deafening. They were all waiting for me to speak, to explain, to confess. But I wasn't going to give them what they wanted. Not yet. The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating. My mom was the one who broke it, her voice sickly sweet. "So, Ted, we saw your car on Instagram. It's beautiful. What a surprise. We had no idea you were doing so well." She looked at my dad, a silent plea for him to join in. He just grunted, still staring at me as if I were a stranger. Sarah, my sister, fidgeted with her phone, avoiding eye contact. She was always good at that, at staying out of the way when the tension got too thick. "I just wanted to say happy belated birthday, Ted," she mumbled, not looking up. "I'm sorry we forgot." The apology felt hollow, just something to fill the silence. "It's fine," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I had a great day." My dad finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't play games, Ted. Where did the money for that car come from? It didn't just fall from the sky. And don't tell me your job pays you that much." I leaned forward, clasping my hands together. "It's my money, Dad. I earned it. I don't see why I have to justify it to you." He slammed his hand on the arm of the chair. "Because we're your family. We should know these things. We've been struggling, Ted. Your mother's medical bills, the house payments, you have no idea." My mom started to cry, a few carefully placed tears rolling down her cheeks. "Yes, Ted. Your father had to take out a loan, and we're barely making the payments. We're so worried. It's so unfair." And that's when the lie started to unravel. The previous month, my parents had called me, asking for a loan. A large loan, $50,000, to help with some unexpected medical bills for my mom. They promised to pay it back within 6 months, once my dad got his big bonus at work. I felt a pang of guilt and sent them the money, even though I knew I shouldn't. It was a huge chunk of my savings at the time, and I had a feeling I would never see it again. But now, as my mom sobbed about medical bills, a knot formed in my stomach. She was right, they were struggling, but it wasn't because of medical bills. My dad and I had always had a strained relationship, and his one hobby was playing poker. He would go to illegal games, betting big and always coming home either with a pile of cash or a story about how he lost everything. It was an open secret in our family, a thing we never talked about. A few years ago, he had a big win and used it to pay off the mortgage, so my mom and Sarah always pretended he was just going out with the guys. But I knew. I knew he had a problem. I looked at him, really looked at him. His face was pale, and his eyes darted away when I met his gaze. He wasn't mad about my car, he was mad that I had money he couldn't get his hands on. My dad was a man who lived by his own set of rules, and to him, family meant a shared wallet. He saw me as a piggy bank that he had a right to, and the thought made my skin crawl. The medical bills were probably just a cover story for another gambling debt, and the loan he'd just taken out was likely more of the same. The bonus he promised was a lie. I was their new source of income. My parents and sister were all looking at me, expecting me to fall for the sad family routine. They were hoping I'd feel guilty for having so much when they had so little. My dad probably thought he could convince me to hand over some cash, to help him get back on his feet. The thought of them using my mom's health as a way to get money, or worse, my dad pretending to be sick just to get money, was disgusting. The dread I felt earlier had now turned into a cold, hard anger. I stood up, my jaw tight. The living room suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. "I have something to tell you," I said, my voice low. "Something you all need to hear." My words hung in the air, a final warning before the storm. My mom stopped her fake crying, and even Sarah looked up from her phone. My dad's face was a mask of cold fury. He knew I was onto him, that I wasn't going to be easily manipulated. "What could you possibly have to tell us?" my dad sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "That you won the lottery? That you're a millionaire now?" "Not quite," I said, a bitter smile on my face. "But I did become very wealthy very quickly. And the thing is, I'm not a millionaire. I'm a multimillionaire. And I'm not going to give you a single penny." The silence that followed was so complete you could hear the air conditioner humming. My mom's mouth dropped open, her eyes darting between me and my dad. Sarah finally put her phone down, her face pale. My dad's fury slowly morphed into disbelief, then into a strange kind of defeated resignation. He knew I wasn't bluffing. He could see it in my eyes. "That's not what I'm here to talk about," I continued, my voice low and calm. "I'm here because I need to tell you what I'm going to do next. You asked me where the money came from, and I'll tell you. The company I worked for went public, and my shares were worth a fortune. I'm not going to be some piggy bank for you to use and abuse. I've bought myself a new house, a car, and now I'm starting a new company. And here's the thing. I'm putting all my assets, every single one of them, into a trust. And the trustee is not going to be anyone from this family. The money is for me, and for the things I want to build. You will not have access to it, ever." The anger in my dad's eyes returned, but this time it was mixed with fear. He saw his golden goose flying away. My mom's face twisted in disgust. "How could you do this to your family, Ted? We've given you everything. We've raised you, we've loved you, and now you're just going to turn your back on us?" "You didn't give me everything," I said, the words coming out in a rush. "You gave me nothing. You forgot my birthday. You forgot me. You forgot who I was. And as for your so-called love, that was all just for show. Your love was conditional. It was always about what I could do for you, what I could give you. When I was just a quiet kid with no money, you didn't even notice me. But the moment I became successful, you suddenly wanted to be my family again." I stood up, feeling a strange lightness in my chest, as if a great weight had been lifted. The air in the room was electric with unspoken rage and disappointment. I was no longer the quiet kid, the forgotten son. I was a man with a plan, a man with a future that didn't include them. The moral dilemma was gone. The choice was clear. I had to protect myself. The question now was not what I would do, but what they would do. Would they beg? Would they rage? Would they finally realize what they had lost? I was about to find out. The game was on. I was not going to be their puppet anymore. I was going to be the master of my own life. The silence in the room was a living thing, breathing and choking all at once. My dad's face, which moments ago held a mix of fear and anger, was now completely blank. He looked at me, then at my mother, then at my sister, as if searching for an explanation. My mother, who had been a whirlwind of manufactured emotions, stood up, her face a mask of cold fury. "You are nothing to us, Ted," she said, her voice low and sharp, all pretense of love gone. "You never were. You were just a mistake. Your father and I always hoped you would become something, but you were always just a quiet, boring little boy who couldn't even stand up for himself. Sarah was always the one we were proud of. She was the one who had a future. You were just a disappointment. My sister, Sarah, who had been silent for so long, finally looked up. Her face was pale, and her eyes were wide with shock. Mom, what are you saying? You can't just. My dad cut her off, his voice finally returning. Don't you dare, Ted. You can't just walk away from us. We're your family. We're the only family you have. You owe us. That $50,000, we need that money. We need it now. I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. I saw a man who was drowning, a man who had lost everything, not because of some terrible misfortune, but because of his own greed and pride. I looked at my mother and saw a woman who had traded genuine love for a facade of a perfect family. And I looked at my sister, who was finally seeing the truth of what our family was, and I felt a pang of pity for her. I don't owe you anything, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The money I gave you was a gift, not a loan. But I've already put a stop payment on the check. It's gone. You won't be able to get it. My dad's eyes went wide. You can't do that. That's not your right. It's my money, I said. And it's my right. I'm not a piggy bank, and I'm not a mistake. I'm a man who finally understands the value of $1 and the value of a family. You are my blood, but you are not my family. Not anymore. And I'm not going to be the one to pay for your mistakes. You made your bed, now you have to lie in it. I turned and walked to the door. I felt a strange sense of calm, a peace I had never felt before. My mom's words echoed in my head, you are nothing to us, Ted, but they didn't hurt. They were just words. I had built my own life, my own success, and I had done it all on my own. I had no one to thank but myself, and no one to blame but them. I got into my Mercedes, the engine humming to life, and drove away, leaving behind the house and the people I once called family. I was alone, but for the first time in my life, I was free. I didn't know what the future held for me, but I knew one thing for sure, it was a future I would build on my own terms, without them. The open road stretched out before me, and I drove into the darkness, not knowing where I was going, but knowing exactly where I came from.